Tanner. Tanner.
Yeah. You're stepping on my lines.
Cheers. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
We are a long way from New York.
We are a long way from New York. Yeah, we work with each other.
We're a couple blocks away.
Yeah,
really nice to meet you at that conference thing.
yeah, that was great.
Hey guys.
Chandos, how are you?
Conference
Bob.
news.
Hey. How are you
Can we
doing?
join you guys?
When you walk into a bar, you can actually take off your badges. You don't need to
Oh, well,
thank God.
we weren't sure if you'd
Throw your
recognize
badges on
us.
the table now.
Okay.
Please, sit down and join us.
It may not come off.
You're ahead of us.
Backwards.
Yeah, we're ahead of you.
Yeah, we got started a little bit early. A little bit, you know. Good bartender named Kevin. He's here to help us out today.
Hi, Kevin.
Cacho.
I don't think I know you. I'm Andrew. I'm Philippe. Very nice to meet you.
Oh, hi, Andrew. I'm Karlene.
Hey, Karlene. Nice to meet you. I'm Andrew Douglas, IBM.
Oh, Karlene O'Hara, IPG Mediabrands.
Hi,
Andrew
Chandos
Douglas.
Quill. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Karlene. Bruce Biegel from
Bruce.
Winterberry Group.
Nice to
Nice to meet you.
Ebiquity. I forgot to say that.
You did something. You're from Ebiquity?
Ebiquity.
What do you do at Ebiquity?
I am the head of analytics at Ebiquity, North America.
That sounds cool.
And Karlene, what do you do?
I lead product management for audience and data products, as well as data partnerships.
So you're a data person.
I'm a data
Serious
person.
data person.
I love it.
Andrew, Andrew and I just met. We kind of came into the bar. We were hanging out, so we just started talking. We found out we were both from New York.
Yeah.
Well, what exactly do you do at
So
IBM?
I do data platforms. Data platforms is data strategy at Ivy for all of the marketing.
Sounds good. And Chandos, I've known you for a while, but
Yeah,
maybe
but just
the rest.
for everybody else's benefit, I'm a VP of Strategic Partnerships at Acxiom. Yeah.
You know what? We're being rude because Andrew and I are drinking and you are not. Kevin, would it be possible to get something?
Sure. Cacho, ¿qué tal? What can I get you? Would you like to start with something light, refreshing, like a chocolate? It's a local wine produced about 2 towns over.
That sounds
amazing.
That sounds great. Yeah, please. Should we have something with it?
Absolutely. Be right back.
Okay. So, anyway, as long as we're sitting in a bar, going and hanging out at a data conference,
Here you go,
perhaps
guys.
we should talk a little bit about data today.
Talk data.
I don't know, but maybe we should have our drinks poured for us.
Here you are.
Thank you.
So, Kevin, what can you tell us about this?
Sure, guys. Start off with a little bit of Amestoy chocolate. So it's grown 2 towns over in Cataria. It's a slightly effervescent, light, crisp wine. Comes from actually the smallest denominación de origen, so the smallest wine growing region in Europe. So let that be known. And you pour it like this, from on high to aerate it, give it a little faux effervescence. And I'm going to go ahead and serve that with a couple pinchos, guys. One, a little bit of jamón ibérico with some goat cheese.
What do you think it'd take to
as
get
well
some drinks up
as
here, huh?
a little bit of salmon ahumado, so smoked salmon with an anchovy. And so we have 2 types of anchovies. We have the boquerone, which is a white anchovy, marinated in vinegar, and then the black anchovy that is cured in salt. So I'll be right back with these.
What a treat.
We
Thanks
will
so
let
much.
you
That sounds
pick
great.
Very
Cheers.
cool.
and decide what we eat. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
I can't
I'll
reach.
raise them
Cheers.
down here. Long arms.
Oh, that's good.
That is nice. No,
Drink mine a
so,
little fast.
well, you're supposed to drink it all at once.
Oh,
So
okay,
I
good.
was just going slow. That's a me problem. Here's some food.
All right.
Onigin.
So I think you should all start to eat while I ask you questions, because that's always a much better way to have a conversation.
It's something natural.
You know, over the last 2 days, we've been sitting around at this conference talking about data, which everybody likes to do all day, all night. But, you know, one of the things that just keeps coming up is this conversation about identity and understanding people so that you can activate them or you can attribute them. And since you're all in the data partnering and different parts of the data partnering world, I was wondering if I could bounce some ideas. We're actually working on a white paper on some of these topics. So this is kind of a little bit of drinking market research. So I'd like to start talking about identity and understanding this rise of identity graphs and what you need. You know, understanding the data market for years, you know, people have always compiled files. And they would put them into a CRM box or whatever, but the reality is an identity graph lives and breathes much more than a typical CRM file or an offline file. What are you seeing happening as people try to create these and put them together? And maybe, Phil, I'll start with you on this.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this more from the advertiser side, the client side, and while it is a hot topic and everybody's talking about it, I think at this point in time it's fairly limited to their own the owned data. Right? It's ultimately they've already got multiple websites, they have some device advertising, et cetera, and so most of the clients that we work with are typically looking at stitching their data together before even going out to the third party. So it's hot, it's nascent from a client side point of view.
You must be from the media side of the world instead of the CRM world.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Chandos?
Well, yeah, to take off from what you said, I mean, once the CRM data is stitched together, our job is to help augment that with identity graphs that will help our clients, connect all of that data, both from a, online and offline perspective, and do that on a global basis. In fact, working with Karlene on that, actually. Right?
Yeah, from an agency perspective, for IPG, we've started to build a number of identity graphs in different markets. And Acxiom is one of our key partners in that to give us the foundation. And then we stitch other data sources into that graph.
What type of data sources? As you kind of think about what gets stitched, is it use case dependent or is it data type dependent? What are the attributes?
It's a combination. So there is some data types. So we definitely want TV data is key for us. And as well as some mobile data. But the mobile data itself is actually driven by client need. So we've seen a lot of acts around location data. So that's become a big piece for us. But when we go to different markets, like recently I was in Shanghai, they have a lot more needs around e-commerce data. So that's trying to get that type of data source in that specific market.
Because it's lower in the funnel, so people are further down and they're looking for more precision?
Yeah.
And that's really different from business-to-business data. So we are looking at trying to make the connections where we can't make it ourselves. So like Philippe was saying, we're really trying to stitch our own data together first, and then augmenting that with all of our other data partners, whether it be Acxiom, whether it be just even our media partners, and trying to get a real solidified view of who that person is. The good news is that IBM knows who our client is at the CRM level. We have a lot of data there. Mm-hmm. It's actually the anonymous and white space data that we don't have.
Right. Is that the consumer data, or are you looking at, okay, this is Bruce at work, for example, versus this is Bruce as a consumer?
Yeah.
Do you relate the two?
This is Bruce as a business person, and then yes, we do project that to Bruce as a person, so that we can get you whenever you.
So I'm not a person right now.
Not typically, no.
I'm just checking.
Yeah.
All right.
I just one more comment too. Karlene mentioned this is I think too the identity graphs have to be tailored to the market. We were talking earlier about just country by country. There are certain countries and regions that are very much mobile first. There's other ones that have more of that deterministic cookie based approach. So you can't have the same approach necessarily in every country or region.
And
so
you're also not going to have the same coverage. You want to get to eventually covering as much as that market as you like, but you have to recognize that there's a starting point, and especially in some of the APAC markets.
Yep.
But if I was a scaled provider, what I'd be thinking about is, all right, if I'm in the US, for example, I want at least 225 million profiles so that I can cover. But then, so the numbers that I've heard is the average is about 4 devices per person. Okay, so that's kind of the core. Except it's going to be 20 devices as we get out to 2020, 2022. So all of a sudden, how do I track 225 million profiles times 20 devices? But I also don't actually care if your light bulb is connected because I can't advertise on your light bulb. But I will care about your car, and I'll care about your TV sets, and I'll care. So as you think about stitching all of this, again, those priorities and how it differs by country, I think really matters. And also, obviously, the regulatory environment.
Right, absolutely.
Yep.
So for us, we're now working with China on trying to develop an ability to identity graph there. And so what's really different about that market for us is that typically IBM goes high and wide, right? We try to get to the most data with the biggest breadth possible. We're really trying to focus here into a local market, where we are getting to the most localized specific data, and that's a really different environment for IBM.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. You got to do that. Global, then local.
But one thing I wanted to say, though, is that's interesting. Let the Axioms of the world collect the 220 million profiles with the 4 or 20 devices. I think from an advertiser point of view, we need to become smarter in how much data we ingest or how much data we partner with. One, it's expensive, no offense. It's expensive to buy data. I mean, data is expensive.
How do you eat this?
Yeah, I'm a little afraid of that.
I'm not sure where we go.
So
This is a little bar. There's nobody looking over your shoulder. Don't worry. Just if you dribble.
Just me,
But
and
I
I'll
would
help you,
take
I'll
off your
help
white
explain it a little bit. So what we have here, we have Pintxos, not tapas. So if you're in the South, what you typically find in the bars are tapas. So they are kind of just one kind of ingredient like olives or pickled onions or lomo, so cured pork loin. What the Pintxo is, it's uniquely Basque, and it's a more elaborated, more full dining experience, almost like a plate in one little bite.
Nice.
Napkins.
That'd be
Napkins
great.
would be a good
Absolutely.
thing.
gonna need those.
Okay.
So what I was just
Right.
saying is that I think it's incumbent for advertisers to become smarter about the data that they store and that they ingest. And so that's where I think the future lies is smart people who, instead of saying, give us everything, they say, here's what I need for the objectives that I want to achieve.
So it's better curation.
Better
I don't
curation.
need it all, but
Yes.
I'm also going to need it refreshed frequently, because otherwise it gets stale real fast.
Yeah, and
True
I
that.
mean, there's a lot of issue with data quality. So you have to work really closely with your partner to get recency and really validate if you're seeing skews in your data that doesn't make any sense. Sometimes there's a lot of issues around demographic data. And so how do we get to a point of auditing that and see if there's consistency from one partner to
I
the
think
next?
the notion that we look at, so I sit on the board of an onboarding company as well, and what we've seen is we need to validate and create a truth set, something that we know is accurate and precise, that we can bounce this across.
Exactly.
And so maybe you go to somebody like an Acxiom and you say, okay, I need a truth set from you. I don't need everything right now, but give me something that I know is accurate enough and precise enough. Because not all data can be accurate, but it doesn't mean it's precise. So when I log in to Netflix, well, my login is shared by my 2 kids, my 2 stepkids, my wife, my ex-wife, my parents, but they all
Really?
I hope they're not
Pretty
listening because you're
interesting.
going to get charged for that.
That's okay. But you know, they're going in, and different people go in. You're only allowed 4 simultaneous users. So different people go in at different times. Sometimes it's really me. Sometimes it's parents me. So it's always different, but it's still accurate because it was my authentication. So sometimes it's a bit of a challenge.
Yep.
I'm feeling a
Not
little
easy.
dry here.
I know, right?
Geez, you guys are
Okay,
fast.
Kevin, why is there so little in my glass?
I'll tell you about that. So
Why don't we have drinks?
we here think that you should
There's
just
nothing in
drink
my glass.
having your- God.
Sorry.
telling us to stop.
We hear voices.
God, stop. We have to drink.
So we, along with cider, we, as in I look very Basque, I'm an American living in the Basque country, but we have an idea that you should just take what you're going to drink in one gulp,
Oh.
right? So it doesn't get warm, doesn't get flat. So we
Thumbs
do
up.
the same thing with chocolate and cider. Yep.
So you're saying I did it right, even
You
though I
d-
didn't know it.
You're drinking a little slow, actually.
But that's the
And then I see you guys are keeping your napkins on the table. You just throw them on the floor here. We're a Pintxo's bar, not a restaurant. So it's considering like people are coming up and picking food and things like this.
Oh.
You just want to throw it on the floor because you don't want to have a dirty napkin near the food you're eating.
So the better the place, the more dirty napkins?
It shows a lot of turnover.
Okay.
That's good. That was
Popular.
good. Cool.
It's popular.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. So
It's a
that's-
data point.
It is a good
More
data
napkins,
point.
more.
More napkins.
More
Now, if you
likes.
have to compile all the IDs associated with the napkins,
Oh,
that's
boy.
a problem.
Helps keep
And then
the
there's the
shoe
whole
bottoms
privacy
clean,
thing
too.
about, was this your napkin or your napkin? All right, moving on.
This is going
Doesn't
south.
matter. All right, so the next area that I wanted to focus on, we're seeing the rise of data exchanges. Data exchanges started with some of the onboarders, but now we're starting to see technology companies start to open their own data exchanges. We're seeing different kinds of co-ops. So we're seeing a different type of second-party ecosystem start to build, as well as the third-party ecosystem. And what are you seeing in the market, and what do you see working, and what are we going to use it for? Is it to activate? Is it to attribute? I will start with you, Chandos.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really interesting area because, you know, for us, it's all about data monetization. And I think that there's 2 places where what you brought up I see, you know, happening and occurring. One is data exchanges, data marketplaces, and you see them being very industry specific. So in the hedge fund space, there's more companies developing kind of a marketplace for connecting buyers and sellers of data. I see it in the healthcare space as well. So I think that's a pretty fascinating, model, these kind of niche industry marketplace focus. And then the other is, on the second-party data, developing what we call collaborative monetization environments.
Collaborative targeting environments, I think I remember from many years
Maybe
ago.
there you go. But it is the
always new
same
again.
concept of being able to bring, together in a kind of private environment, the ability to share information and leverage that, so.
Yeah, second-party data just gives you an opportunity to try some unique data set, be able to do partnerships, get more exclusive than one of the third party. I think that's the big thing that's highlighted, at least for us.
For a company like IBM, that's one of our main advantages, is that we have a lot of partners, we have a lot of existing strategic relationships.
So you have an ecosystem.
So we have an ecosystem, exactly, though, where we can actually tap into second-party data systems from, let's say, an American Express or a United Airlines, and we can tap into those systems really quickly and easily and share our data across.
So it allows you to build the profiles
It
of the
does.
more partners.
It does.
But I guess there have to be rules of engagement within this.
definitely.
And I think
Absolutely.
that seems to be something that the market's still trying to decide what works and what doesn't. Do you have any comments and thoughts, Philip? on
No,
this?
I mean, I have comments and thoughts, not
On this.
I'm full of comments and thoughts. No, I was sitting, it's actually a great evolution that these second-party relationships are starting. I mean, until recently, I didn't even believe that there was still a second party left. It was either you owned the data or you didn't, or you bought the data. And the buying of the data was actually very loaded because there were not that many players in the field. Well, that's not entirely fair. You were there historically, but you're not necessarily evolved beyond, where data was the business model. I mean, when we started buying data, we ended up buying data from media companies where media was the business model, and it came with a lot of strings attached, which is you got to buy X amount of data on our platform. And oh, by the way, if you do analytics and you prove that our medium doesn't work, well, you can't really talk about that.
Right.
You're not allowed to talk about
Absolutely.
that. So that is actually an evolution that I think is going to be profitable for everybody in terms of
Democratizing?
cut me off. Democratization of, I'm a foreigner. I can get away with that. Democratization of data, I think this is ultimately going to be a benefit, and the reinvigorating of the second party data, where I think there's a closer relationship to the data owner and the data user than where third party data is actually an arm's length relationship with money attached.
One comment I'd like to make about some of the niche data that you brought up, like healthcare. Do you guys see that being able for them to sustain that business model when you're just offering this one thing and your limited scope of how many clients you can
Well,
actually
I'm not a
reach?
data scientist, but my view on this is there's always some attribute, some type of data that's going to work for somebody's model. So there's not an end to the number of attributes you need. I remember it used to be if you were a data compiler and you had 1,500 attributes, that was about as much coverage, and now it's tens of thousands.
But I think what you're saying is just like the market research companies have moved from purely survey research now into the behavioral research, that the one-off, let's say, prescription monitoring systems, they are now also moving into the digital space to actually collect more data so that they can make more of those connections. So I believe that that's also an evolution away from a one-touch data model to a multi-touch data model.
Yeah, one last comment. I mean, from a partnering perspective, we've gone from, buying data as well, right? We acquire and build our products that way. Now we still do that, but adding on really working not with data companies, but brands themselves to monetize their data. And that would be a relatively new shift over the last couple of years, I think.
Would that be second-party data for you? If
That's
you're
what I'm kind
monetizing
of
other
looking,
people?
this was relevant to the
Is
topic.
it your
So,
third party,
partnerships
my
like,
second party, and your first party?
Is there
We're
really a difference between
cousins,
second and third?
Yes.
You don't have to pay for it, which is much more efficient. How's that?
If you trade it and exchange it,
That's
as
what I
long as
care
you've got the
about.
rights for it, you're okay. We're being rude again. We have alcohol,
empty
they
glasses,
do not.
yeah.
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes,
might we get some beers for everybody?
sure, be right over.
And could you tell us what we should have?
Yeah, I'll take care of it for you right now. So, there's a local brewery just down the street called Basqueland Brewing. It's about 3 years old.
this is
And-
yours, right?
Someone's been doing a research. Yeah,
Well, I
it's
remember you
it's
saying
ours.
something on the
It
way
was
in.
third-party research.
Yeah, third-party research.
It's a third-party data model.
We were tracking you.
That's scary.
Sorry.
So I'm going to pour 5 different beers for the 5 of you. So we're going to start off with,
Is this the name of your?
yeah, it's Basque Glen Brewing. It says project. We're dropping project because we used to be gypsies, and now we are moving into the actual super hyper growth phase. So we're actually going to make it for real.
Cool.
So we have our brewery out in Hernani, which is about 10 minutes away. You like probably crisper beers, so this is our Kolsch. I'll leave that for you. You guys can pass and share, right? This is a hoppy Choch beer, so session IPA.
Thank you.
You will drink whatever I pour you. So this is the fruit
Shut
boot.
up and drink.
And he'll have 2, please.
Yes.
It's an IPA with mango,
Oh, wow.
and
look- you
then
don't
our
look
flagship
very,
IPA.
Oh, yeah,
And
well,
I'll be
that's a
back.
longer,
You wanna
that's a longer
switch?
conversation. No, no,
switch.
because both are hoppy.
To pour one for you as well.
Great, thanks.
Oh, mine smells good.
All right, well, while he's doing that, I wanted to kind of move on and talk
Yeah.
a little bit about some of the other use cases that we're starting to see evolve, one of which is personalization. So there's personalization in paid media, but what about personalization on owned media? Content personalization, site personalization, et cetera. Andrew, you want to kind of kick off on this one?
Yeah, sure. We're building a system right now to actually integrate all of our DMP data, all of our CRM data into our CMS system so that we have access to that personal touch point that's relevant to the consumer at any point during their journey. And so via our identity stitching, we're able to not only take the media data where we can personalize through DCO onto site where we can personalize via the CMS system and have a unified vision of what that consumer will need.
And be able to follow that consumer as they've come from paid
That's
all the
right.
way through owned?
That's exactly right. And so, and also even through that journey. So you take them from their experience on site and you have them register, and then we're able to actually give them the experience backwards to say you came in on this subject, you're now on a different subject, but remember you might also want to cross-sell over to that other subject.
But we're
you
really
came in
starting
on.
to see that customer journey.
That's
and
right.
be able to record that.
That's right.
It's a bit of a pendulum movement. I think it's got out of fashion when media and media attribution became hot with everything and it became the buzzword. Everybody was focusing on media and forgot site. 10 years ago, site was the only thing because it was the only thing that was measurable.
Right.
And so I'm secretly hoping, and I'll work my, no, I can't say it. I can.
One more
I work
beer.
my butt
One more
off to start, to your point, to start
Just
connecting
people in a bar.
both, right? It start connecting both. You start connecting the media side of the equation with the back end side of the equation and start giving a full experience. And I think one of the things to get there is, for example, attribution right now is primarily focused on media and media impressions. Talk about generalizing that to any piece of content that is being served to your customer or to your prospect. Track it all from the site all the way up to the media and vice versa, and then start measuring that as opposed to, it's measuring content as much
But
as
I'm
it's
going to
measuring
need
media.
I'm going to need a new tool set. I'm going to need an awful lot of data. I'm going to need data that I have and maybe data
Yeah.
that I need to get
Some of our
from somewhere else.
colleagues that were presenting this week were actually talking about a split model with MTA. And I think that that's really imperative here because you talk about personalizing at an engagement level for an individual, for you,
Right.
and then personalizing or optimizing to the ROI relative for me to a company, to something that's buying. So on the business to business side, you have 2 different mechanisms that you're trying to optimize to. Your engagement and the company's willing to buy. The consumer might be a little bit different because it might be the same journey, but at least for business to business, it is that 2 optimizations.
But it's also, we start at the segment level in media, in paid,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're getting down to the people level or the person level. What do you think, Karlene?
Because I feel you have to make sure you're targeting the individual and you're showing them the right ad at the right time, and that's what's driving that. Well, I think the concern is making sure that we are serving them the right thing, so that optimization plan is really working. And as they change their mindset, because one of the challenge with the way we target at that individual level is that you may see something that maybe your kids went on. They were the ones that was looking at something
That was
else.
just a hypothetical case, by the way.
But I'm going to throw something in there.
Big disclaimer.
Big wrench. 1994, yes. The book came out, One-to-One Personalization of Peppers and Rogers, right?
Yes.
It was never realized because the cost of content creation, everything that you need to be really one-on-one communicating with people was actually exorbitant. And I'm a bit of a skeptic whether we will be personalized, but to the one-on-one level, I'm curious whether that's going to work.
I think
We're
it's a
seeing
little
it on
bit
site,
different than
though.
that.
On site, it can happen.
I think it's still segmented, to your point. I think that what you do is you build content relative to segments.
Yeah.
And then what you do is then you
yes.
personalize the site relative to you, the individual.
Yes.
So if you're a retail banker who is also a CIO, who is also in San Francisco, you will have a different piece of content than a CMO in New York.
But it's still based on
Drink
it's still based on segmentation. It's
Also
not
think it
necessarily
works
true
for
one-on-one.
different-
It's that you layer
Right.
segments on top of each other
Yeah.
to say, here's the individual,
Right.
and you build your capability at the segment level.
When you prioritize at the content level. So what's your business priority? So
Yes.
your content's prioritized relative to your segments, and you let them work together.
But
Yeah.
the actual, when you think about it though, at that site level, I have 3 states. I have the known person who's authenticated. I know you, I'm allowed to converse with you because we've already established a relationship. I have the partially known state. So now somebody's coming, I've seen them before, I might know them, but they haven't authenticated this time. So I could, even though I actually do know them, maybe there's a cookie on there, or maybe it's a device ID that I recognize, I could talk to them like I know them, which can get really creepy if they're not ready for that. And then there's those who are first-time visitors. So what we're seeing is we're seeing clients who go to a third-party onboarder, and they'll onboard their data. So their CRM file is onboarded so they can do that kind of intermediate recognition.
Sure.
And
But-
manage it over time.
And then manage it over
Right.
time.
Coming from an agency
I like that.
perspective, I think that's where we challenge when we service our clients, because not every vertical this will work for. I don't want to, if I have a pharmaceutical client, I want to be careful about what I'm serving you if I don't
Yeah,
truly
always
know.
be careful with
Very
people
true.
who sell drugs. It's a thing.
Before I was at IBM, I was at WebMD. And so we built those data-driven models at WebMD to actually do that exact thing. But it's in a privacy-protected way. It's with a behavioral manifestation and inference that you need some type of information. So
We might know some of the same people, remind me to ask you later.
we probably do.
We definitely know some
So
of
one
the
of the other big changes that we're seeing in the market is entrants like Adobe, who've come up and they've now got a co-op with 1.8 billion devices, and they've got a data exchange, and the technology folks are saying, nope, I'm not going to push your buttons on this. But they're saying that, maybe it's not about the data people, it's about the technology people. And how are you seeing this evolve? So is it going to be a tech-first approach and data second, or is it going to be, I really do need that right data so that I can understand that audience?
I think you get the right data from the right tech. So that's my opinion. If you
There's
have-
some skeptical looks.
Interesting.
But I'm thinking about something else.
We're leaning back.
I
no?
think so. So my thing is, when data is being offered to you, but the business model of the company offering it to you is not selling data, I'm always suspicious. Like, for example, if Adobe is telling me I've got this massive data set, Adobe is a tech company. They want to sell their tech. So what is that data going to do to me if tech? It's the same thing with media companies.
Yeah,
If
I
media
don't know.
companies want to sell
I
your
don't know if I
data,
agree.
they
Are
want to
you
sell
saying
media.
that tech companies sell the dream? No, I'm just
Totally agree with it. But we also sell the data. So I think Adobe is both a tech company and also a data company. I mean, Adobe Site Catalyst is a data company. They're aggregating and know more about probably web analytics than most of what we do.
But they make money
So,
on the
right?
tech. They don't make money on the data.
Well, they make money on the data because you're using their tech to be able to produce the data. So, so my opinion
Give
is,
away it's kind of the model is, we give away the data to sell the media,
Yes.
or
Or
we give away the
But I think
tech
that-
to
I think
sell
that-
the
or we-
data,
I think
that
or we
business
give away the
model's
data
gone.
to sell the tech.
Or
think that
worse,
business
we
model is
hoard
all
the
gone.
data to sell the media.
That's
Right?
what-
The
that's
walled
what I'm
gardens, that's the problem as well. Is like we hoard the data because we want to use it for our purposes, not to the general benefit of everybody who actually
But I
works
think
with
the
us.
benefit here is that the data now is the asset. So I think
Yes.
that the technology is the way that you get to the data. So you have to have the good tech, and what I was meaning by that is that you have to have good tech to be able to collect the data correctly.
Right.
And that's from a GDPR perspective. It's from an actual getting the data to the right
Don't
place.
say
It's
those
about-
4 letters to me.
That's not the 4 letters you told me not to say earlier.
Yes.
Nope, I don't like those
That
4
and
letters.
blockchain. We were not going to talk about blockchain either.
Right.
Let's move on.
Now I have
No,
nothing
no,
to
no,
say.
off the table, off the table, not on the table.
No
Wait.
blockchain,
There you go.
sorry. But no, it's true. The technology folks have entered this market, and they are seeking to change it. But I still think that we are a data-centric market. The other thing that we're seeing is we're seeing new sources of data coming from companies where data is a byproduct.
That's right.
Yeah, it
And
goes
they're
back
being
to-
told
Yep.
by McKinsey or by Winterberry Group saying, you know what, you should be able to monetize this.
Right.
So we're seeing new segments and new types of data enter the market that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, and like back to the partnership discussion, I mean, that's what I was mentioning before. I mean, we're very focused on working with companies, brands whose primary business isn't data, but has very interesting and unique data. And it's, there's a whole process to doing that. It's not like working with a data company who already has it all
Right.
put together and managed, right, technology, created the segments. Now we have to actually help do the upfront, evaluation, help collect it, the heavy lifting, which for us has been an easy extension of what we've been doing for
But
years.
I think that
but-
that's also where some of the problem lies, is if you don't have the people that understand the data and what the outcome is going to be used for, that data becomes a mess, and it becomes unusable, and so then people are trying to sell really effective data.
And that's why people go
So
into
it's-
technology.
That's right.
Because the technology makes it easier for
That's
them
right.
to utilize that data.
And you need
Don't
the
even-
speed and you need the process.
We're now we're leaning this way. Now we're like, okay.
But he's right.
Do not go there.
Yeah, but he is
You
right.
go-
You
don't
need
go to
that
the dark
speed,
side.
you need the power, you need the processing, and you need to be able to resolve the identities, so there's so much data, what's good
And
data, what's
faster.
bad,
Do it
and you got to do
faster.
it faster. As we move to kind of an always-on, real-time environment, it becomes that much
Yes.
more important to have the right tech. One more thought. GDPR, going to change the world?
Had to
Not
bring that
change
up.
the world? I had to say it's like saying shit, but you can say it anyway.
I mean, it's going to change how you deal with vendors and partners because that's the nature of the law. But I think it helps in some ways. I think it's problematic in a lot of ways. Just because it's hard, there's so much gray area in this law that I don't know if I'm a controller or a processor some days, and I can be both. And I think that's one of the challenges, but now I need to put a lot of onus on my data partners, at least from my perspective, to say, are you in compliant? Are you doing these things? And here's my DPA, fill it out. And then the vendor is going to go, here's my DPA, fill it out.
That's right, that's right.
I mean, we've been so fortunate that, we have such a strong chief privacy officer, and we've had for several years, 2 of them actually.
Sheila's great.
Yeah, so for us, yeah, you have to adapt, you have to make changes given the regulation and what's coming, but, I think it's been fortunate we've taken such a conservative approach to how we do things from a while back. It's not like this huge change for us, it's really more just figuring out, how we continue to provide transparency and consent and make sure what we're putting together is ethically sourced. And we have to do, a better job, even better job, vetting things and really going deeper. But I don't, I think it's not a big, scary 4-letter word, really.
Yeah.
It's just,
No, it's not. I think that's
It's not going to be the end of the
It
data
is-
economy.
it is being perceived that way, and I think clients can use our help actually to educate to help them understand what the benefits are and what the drawbacks are of GDPR. Right now, what we're seeing is that a fair amount of US-based clients are basically saying, like, we're shutting down any interaction from the EU because we don't want to deal with it at this point
It's
in time.
easier to say no if
It's
you're in
easier to say
compliance.
no.
It's like, all right, just
And
say
we
no
need to-
until somebody figures it out.
I think we need to own up to evolving that conversation and saying, look, it's not evil. On the contrary, it could be an opportunity to be
Right.
better. There's gray area, but it reduces the gray area that we're in
And for
right
the-
now, which is horrible.
And for the
I
majority of the
agree,
part-
because I wonder if the US needs, not as extreme as GDPR, but maybe a law in a similar.
With this government, no.
Well, no,
Because they could care
And
less.
we're veering off
we
the
said we weren't
topic.
talking about
When do we talk about religion? Oh, no,
No,
that's
we're
not,
going to talk
we're not
about
gonna
the
do
weather
that.
next.
Yes,
It
the
just
weather.
rains
yes.
here, sorry.
I have one more point about GDPR, is that I think that most of that can be helped by technology.
Oh, yeah.
Surprise. But, and I do believe that there are.
Karlene's
that
moving
there's
into the
really
data
easy
crowd
ways, I
over
know,
there.
right? No, there's actually really easy ways to implement that for clients, and it's really easy for us to actually help get them into a space where they're more comfortable. Most of the things that we do today are compliant. If you ask for opt-in in the right places, if you have a trust manager and a tag manager, you're in compliance. So there's a lot of ways to work with what people already have to make sure that they know what they have, and it's a simple pivot. Now, where you run into problems is with big companies like IBM, where we have massive number of pages that we have to make sure we're auditing to make sure that we're still in compliance. And that's a hefty task, but that can also be helped by automation and technology.
Okay, I'm just going to keep pouring you
You're
beer.
welcome.
And the answer is just going to be technology as we go
Solves
forward.
everything.
Automation
Kevin,
and
can you
technology.
help us, please? I just want to keep pouring beer.
You're right there.
Thank you.